Meeting to order. Thank you for joining us this evening, June 19th, Oconee County Council at 6 p.m. We'll start as usual with the public comment session. First on the list for public comment today is Ms. Jean Jennings.
Good evening, County Council. I'm Jean Jennings. In my opinion, I think it's a sad day in Oconee County when a local newspaper with its owner and so-called local leaders who are cronies and cohorts of that newspaper person can go along and endorse a certain candidate and control the election. No wonder we're hurting in Oconee County if we call these people leaders. The paper stated this candidate won by a landslide. I call it winning by a mudslide. If this newspaper calls this good reporting, I call it junk mail. The same applies to the free weekend paper called the Limited Edition. In my area, the carriers throw this out into people's yards and also put it in the people's paper boxes if they have them. The people leave the papers in the yard and in the paper boxes so the carriers will see them when they bring the next ones. This is to make the carriers aware that the people don't want the papers, so they won't leave them anymore. Does this work? No. Soon you've got papers piled up in the yards and paper boxes. I wanted to ask the county council, is this littering? Don't we have an ordinance on littering? If I want the opinion of the newspaper owner, I would buy one of his papers, which I don't buy them. So that means I don't want his opinion. The same applies to the Lake Living magazine that comes through the mail. I don't even look at it. I take it with my other trash up to the recycling center, and I also call that junk mail. Ms. Kamick, I'm sure you've heard the expression, it is better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. You lost in the election, but in my opinion, I think you won in the way you ran your campaign. In my eyes, it was a good, clean campaign. You haven't lowered your standards. You haven't been influenced by others. You still have your self-respect, and that means everything. I'm proud you're my number one district county council representative, and I do mean number one. My hat goes off to you for caring and being fair and square. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jennings. Mr. John Dalen.
Good evening, Council. You may recall I came here and talked to you about smart meters, and I just have a little update for you. Blue Ridge did come out and change my meters. They are now analog meters, and I believe they did it because they really didn't have any choice. What they're doing is illegal. I know, Etta, you talked to somebody at Blue Ridge. These meters do collect data. It's not much different than what Facebook did. They will be able to collect all kinds of data and sell it and do whatever they want with it. And it's not a good thing. It's an invasion of your privacy, and it's against the law. And they're doing it they're installing these meters without telling anybody what the meters are capable of. And there's also health and environmental issues, and none of this is being discussed. What I would like to suggest is that you look at this a little more closely. Installation of smart meters is unlawful absent customers' consent. Utility companies should be required to obtain informed consent before installing any of these type meters. It is a fact that smart meters collect data. That data can be sold or used in a myriad number of ways that can be detrimental to people. And the safety of these meters is in question. And it's county government's job to protect the people. And you are now aware that utility companies are doing unlawful acts in installing these meters. They're not informing their customers, and I believe this creates a liability for the county and possibly individual liability for each one of you council members. The privacy that's being violated is protected by the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. It's protected by Section 10, Article 1, Section 10 of the South Carolina Constitution, which is even stronger in its protection than the U.S. Constitution. There is a case, United States versus Jones. I will get you a copy of this stuff. If I can email it to you, is that acceptable? Okay, I'm going to send you some information. Attorney General Alan Wilson did an analysis of the Jones case, and it's actually a case about GPS monitoring of police monitoring of a suspect's vehicle, but they go in to talk about other technologies and other invasions of privacy in this case. It's a very important case. You need to look at it. All of you have taken an oath to support and defend this Constitution. And you all tell me that you care about children. Well, I care about children too. And this smart meter is not just a meter. This is a lot. There's a bigger picture here that you're not seeing, and I need you to look at it. Okay? So you should study it more thoroughly. You might invite reps from the utilities, and this includes Seneca Light and Power, Blue Ridge Electric, Duke Energy. You might invite them to come on the record and discuss this issue with you and tell you why they're not informing their customers.
You have 30 seconds left.
Okay. Anyway, so yeah, if you really care about the children, they're the ones that are going to pay for this. They're the ones that are going to grow up in a society that's no longer free, because once you lose your privacy, your rights to privacy, and once you lose your property rights, you don't have freedom. Thank you.
Thanks. Ms. Sherry Bailey.
Hello, and thank you for letting us speak tonight. I have to bring up, I want the council to draw up an ordinance, a policy for treatment of animals. In the extreme months, these animals are not protected, they can't protect themselves, and they are being stuck out. I would even consider like a car in the sun, and their igloo houses are just ovens, and we need to have ordinances so the animal control can act on this. And I ask that the parts that we can act on now, like providing shade, that you would propose something that would speed that process up. In the ordinance, the policy for treatment, I would like for it to specify about the housing and have it uplifted off of the ground so that it cannot flood. I would like shade outside of their house. I would like shavings in the winter. And I would like for the animal control to be able to help us with the policy on the chain, the chokers, the tethering methods. Let's just get more specific with these policies we have. And I think in all of our good common sense, but some people need it written out specifically, and we need that in the hands of our lawmen. And I would also like to say that I personally went around the county from one end to the other and got 100 names plus from everyday average people running stores, buying gas, and I'll say 9 out of 10 eagerly signed this petition. I will submit those. I also put it on change.org, And I can now say the whole world agrees. I specified Oconee County, but New Zealand had a word to say. So I will be happy to submit those to y'all via email, and I have the signatures with me from the county. And I hope I'm not leaving anything out. I'm nervous, and but I understand that this is the beginning of it, and I would like to get this moving along and get the input from animal activists, hunters, law officers, anybody that can put input in it. And I will stumble along to my next step, and hopefully we can get this in our laws so that we can be equipped to rescue these animals from what I consider neglect and abuse. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ma'am, can you say your name for the record?
Yeah. Sherry Bailey,
Bailey?
Seneca. Hi.
Mr. Mike Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Mike Smith, and I am a former member of the BZA Notification Ad Hoc Committee. My purpose tonight is to support the ordinance revisions on tonight's agenda noted as 2018-18, 20 and 21, and to point out some of the highlights of these revisions. BZA Chairman Bill Gilster is not present due to a commitment before the Seneca Council. But first, a brief background history. The ad hoc committee was formed about 6 months ago at the behest of the BZA chairman. He was asking for help in doing a better job in communicating with the public when the BZA was announcing a hearing. The problem was that the process for communicating was not specifically codified for the BZA. Other processes not related to the BZA were used and sometimes not used consistently. As a result, an ad hoc committee was formed to make recommendations. These are the people that were on the committee. The ad hoc committee met twice, proposals were made, discussed, and voted on. The several different components that make up the draft proposal were individually voted on and accepted by a majority vote of the committee. The ad hoc committee then sent the draft proposal to the Planning Commission, where it was discussed at 2 different meetings. No changes were made, and the revised ordinances are before you tonight. Many of the revisions are more robust than the minimum the state law requires. But as I stressed several times during the meetings, it is better to over-communicate than to under-communicate. With this comment in mind, let me show you some of the major components of these revisions. Next slide, please. Remember that these are more robust than the minimum the state law requires. The notification will be increased from 14 to 21 days. The newspaper notice of the hearing. There will be notification by U.S. mail to property owners within a certain radius of the affected property boundary. And lastly, this is all in revision 18, multiple signs of a certain size placed at strategic locations and next to travel routes that are adjacent to the hearing area. Next slide, please. In revision 20, the communication tower balloon test and computer-generated view share analysis of these communication towers has been incorporated. These are towers that are over 75 feet high. In revision 21, we removed a sentence about a communication tower site study that was never completed, so we removed that. And lastly, and probably a very important part, is a sentence placed on the application hearing form recommending a meeting with local residents to resolve their concerns and or listen to their issues. Hopefully, this will prevent multiple BZA hearings if the applicant can show that they have met with residents and have addressed or made an attempt to address their concerns. Lastly, the Planning Commission voted to increase the BZA hearing fee and has forwarded a separate letter to you recommending this fee increase. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Al Schuler? That's quite all right.
I got three things that I want to talk about. Number one, it's the most ridiculous budget I have ever seen in my life. When I worked for the federal government in 2000, I oversaw a $75 million budget. So I know a good bit about budgeting. Number two, you are going to investigate putting up balloons for communications so people have cell phone communications. I lived in Florida long enough to understand that the only thing the balloons do is give somebody something to shoot at. They didn't last but about 4 months. Anywhere you want to look, they have towers that look like trees. They don't look bad. They don't cause a problem. And it's a whole lot cheaper solution than a balloon is. I also run a website, and it is called OconieSC.news. I encourage any of you to use that website to put out any opinion that you would like to put out. Last thing, it killed every state, every city in the United States, and that was the retirement program. Y'all's retirement program is going to kill Oconee County. It is unsustainable. In 1984, the federal government changed their retirement program. At that time, you retired on full pay. The change that they made is that you get a retirement of 1.5% of your salary for each year you work for the government. Now, yes, there were some incentives put in there such that an employee could put up to 2% of his salary, and the federal government matched it, and that money that they matched could be put in a very safe government bonds. It could be put in less safe stock market plans, and then they had some risky stock market plans. Ma'am?
You have 30 seconds remaining.
Okay. I talk slow. 30 seconds is a long time for me. But it is time to look at that retirement plan and completely overhaul it. And sure, I mean, most of you not going to be sitting up there because the county employees are not going to put up with it. But federal employees put up with it. They got used to it. They learned how to make money off of it and wind up with a better retirement than they normally would have. I do not live in Seneca, so I could not vote. If I had lived in Seneca, no matter what I would have had to do, the election would have been different. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bullhorn.
Good evening. I'm Bo Horn. I'll be speaking tonight for the Fire Commission and Chief King concerning the truck replacement schedule. I regret that neither of us was able to attend last week's meeting. The recording shows confusion is occurring over our needs, and we hope to clear it up tonight. First, we want to thank you again for the additional staff and trucks already in the budget. Rest assured, those increases will continue providing the relief the majority of our volunteers seek, while also reducing times for responding to emergency calls. We know how tight the budget has been last year and this year and will be for the next few years. The Fire Commission tries diligently to make good decisions for all stations and the county itself. We seek not to be greedy, but to be team players providing accurate information so that you can make the difficult trade-off decisions. Over the past few years, we've reduced budgets for major trucks from $500 to $450 to $425 to $340,000 a year apiece. We have no idea how $350 and $375 came into the current budget. We're working to reduce the $340. We've done our homework, but we've not yet purchased trucks for that amount. Right now, we're more concerned about future years, not fiscal year 18-19, but 19-20 and beyond. Last week, you may have concluded that we're totally revamping our truck schedule. We are not. Instead, we spent many hours scrutinizing every detail, verifying, adding, deleting, and changing as appropriate so that I can stand here and honestly tell you our schedule is accurate and that we must replace trucks per this schedule, both to complete the fire plan and to maintain the system Senator Alexander says is now a model for the entire state. The Fire Commission also believes our 450 highly dedicated unpaid volunteers who save the county $7 to $15 million every year also deserve not to be asked to operate trucks beyond consensus, national standard replacement recommendations. We're still working to complete the schedule and define alternatives. We'll provide more information in the Emergency Services Committee on July 10th. The fiscal year 18-19 information is accurate, and Mr. Beck was right last week. We cannot continue kicking the can down the road. Whatever cannot be funded this year must be pursued aggressively by the Fire Commission next year. We can now confirm with full accuracy what we said here in February. We need 3 trucks a year, every year, on average. But if you look at the bottom of page 3 that I handed out, the summary screams loudly at the major problem. Notice how widely total expense varies over each of the 5-year periods. The leases caused this situation. If you look at page 1, fiscal year 18-19 shows 4 trucks. They were in the original budget we submitted. I believe 1 was in the initial budget Mr. Mulder presented. We've now added model years to the schedule. Notice all 4 engines for fiscal year 18-19 are past due for replacement. 1 is now 25 years old. I thought surely we could find a way to eliminate 1 truck next year, but having performed the scrutiny myself, I was wrong. We need 4 trucks to meet consensus standards. We'll make do with 2 if necessary, but 1 more prevents us from asking for and expecting 5 trucks next year. We hope you can find a way to provide 1 additional truck this year. In any case, we wanted you to see the latest information we have so you can make the best possible decision for the citizens of Oconee County. I'll be happy to answer questions now or later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. Any council member comments?
Yeah, I have one, just,
Good.
I've been getting all sorts of calls, starting the day after the election. Well, I asked, did you vote? No. You realize, no matter how the election come out, the election board didn't rig it. You can't rig the election. You voted or you didn't vote. So, there were over 10,000 people in that district. Only a little over 3,000 bothered to vote. 7,000 did nothing but ring my phone the next day. If you don't vote, you cannot complain. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a comment about last week's Budget Committee. As Mr. Ernie Beck was giving his presentation on the capital vehicle replacement plan, I was a little disturbed by the hyperbole in the discussion, especially the suggestion that was made that our deputies drive high-mileage relics and would never make it on time to the scene of a crime or an accident. So I took a quick count of our PPVs, the police pursuit vehicles. 13 of them are 2017 models. 16 are 2016. 7 2015, and 12 2014. So 48 are less than 4 years old with low mileage, hardly relics in my opinion. I then took a look at the list of old Crown Vics. Yes, those are relics by all means. They are high mileage vehicles, but they're not PPVs. They will be replaced this coming fiscal year. Sheriff Crenshaw was already allocated $500,000 in his budget to replace those. So I feel bad that Mr. Beck's comments were marred by exaggeration, but please know that our patrol deputies, in fact, drive quality vehicles. Thank you. Any other council member comments? Okay, so no other comments, then please join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. Mr. Root, please.
Please pray with me if you'd like. Father, just let me start with the basics. Thank you for creating us, for sustaining us, for giving us life. I really pray that you would remind us to be appreciative for all things, even the very air that we breathe and the ability to assemble freely together tonight in this deliberative body and exchange ideas from different perspectives. And I pray for your heart that we would have ears to hear and that we would be really quick to listen, so that those perspectives could come together and coalesce around your wisdom, that staff can help council to make wise decisions, and in the end your will would be done for the good of this county. Pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Mr. Davis, the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I believe there was one name on there that you forgot to call out.
I'm sorry, Mr. Nichols.
He's on public hearing unless.
Where's my public hearing sheet?
My name was under Mrs. Jennings.
Yes, for the public hearing for the budget.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we haven't gotten there yet, sir.
Well, I'll have a little bit more than just for the budget, too.
Okay,
Whatever.
sorry.
I'm fine with that. If he wants public comment, that's.
Madam Chair, it's up to you. If you'd like to give him some time to have just open public comment, that would be into your
Yes, I
discretion.
would. Mr. Nichols, come up.
name is Barry Nichols. I'm able to get over here every once in a while, but I keep up with everything that's happening. And you'd be surprised how many people still call me, because I'm also a charter member of the CAVE. You folks back there know what CAVE is, don't you? Sorry, but I'm not going to explain it to you. This has pertaining to not only to the budget, but I've got road fees, senior citizens and their fees, SROs, their vehicles, county council election, and the history of Oconee County. And I'm going to do them in reverse. I'm going to get it all done, then I'll leave you. I came to Oconee County in July 1944. By the grace of God, my dad and mother brought me here from Greenville, South Carolina. At that time, I was 6 years old, and I've been here ever since, except for the 4 and a half years, or whatever it was. I've forgotten now, it's been so long since I was in the military. But whenever I got ready to ship over, I told them I was coming back to South Carolina, to the golden corner of God's green earth. But over the past 50 years, I've seen it disappear. I've seen it be destroyed. I guarantee you that most of these people that are sitting in here now, they came here for only one of two reasons. They wanted to. They liked what they saw. They came, they saw, and then they came back. But now for the past 50 years or so, they want to change everything, make it different, make it to suit what they left, really. So I'm going to say this. If you want to live where you lived at before, that's where you should be at. We had a great country here for a number of years. But now all we've got is rooftops and blacktops. And you folks have seen the floods that have devastated our country. I sat and watched, looked like a river going down the street in a little town up in Elliott, Missouri, Maine, I believe it was. The reason because we're cutting down our timbers. We're clearing out. God's great waters haven't got any place to go into the ground. They've got to run off. Economic development. I talked to one of the gentlemen a while ago. He and I disagree on a whole lot of things. Economic development is one of them here. And you say, well, you got to have it. You've also got to control it. It's got to be controlled, folks. I was going through my notes here from years gone past. This was in April of 2010. The county has approximately $35 million in different bank accounts. Why not use some for road repairs and so forth? At that time, there was 1.6 for a bridge over in the Cobb Bridge. $600,000 of it was only used. What happened to the other $600,000? The other thing is, what happened to the other million? $40 million. That's a lot of money, folks. A lot of money. What happened to it? It's over here where you took off the top on Highway 11. It's down in the golden corner. You hadn't received a thing these people up here and the ones before, y'all have not put in, those places have not added 1 cent to the upkeep of Oconee County. You're stripping the budget.
Mr. Nichols, your time is up. I'll let you talk some more about the budget.
No, ma'am, because I've got to leave. As soon as I leave here, I've got to be gone.
Okay.
Mr. Madden, if you talk to me later, and I'll tell you what else I've got.
Okay.
Y'all folks have a good night.
Well, thank you, sir.
All you folks the same way. Don't like it, come see me or call.
Okay. We need to approve the minutes from June 5th. You have a copy of it?
Second.
Any discussion, changes, corrections? All in favor? Aye. Mr. Martin, your report, please.
Good afternoon, council. And tonight's report is we have one presentation from Mr. John Loomis from the Upstate Alliance. We have public hearings and third and final readings on ordinance 2018-01, which is the fiscal year 2019 budget for Oconee County and all its related funds. 2018-02, which is the school district of Oconee County's budget. 2018-03, which is the QE Fire Special Tax District. We have second reading on several ordinances this afternoon. One of them being 2018-13 addresses sign control language related to sign height and setbacks. 2018-15 is an amendment to add a section to the current ordinance to identify zoning matrix. 2018-16 is the rewrite and revision of the county solid waste ordinance. 2018-17 addresses the litter control ordinance, and I think Mr. Root will have some comments on those when the time comes. And we have first reading on the following ordinances. 2018-18 amends the BZA hearing notification from policy to codification as recommended by the ad hoc committee of the Board of Zoning Appeals public notification procedures. 2018-19 clarifies certain language in the control-free district. 2018-20 is to increase visual data opportunities for the analysts of the communication towers. This was also recommended by the ad hoc committee, Board of Zoning Appeals public notification process. 2018-21 is simply removing some unused language in the code. 2018-22 amends our current setback and requirement for the Lake Residential Districts to a sliding scale similar to that is used in the control-free district. 2018-23 amends the fund balance as been discussed in several meetings here in the past. We have 4 action items tonight on the agenda. The first action item is the approval of funding for the county's annual financial auditing services in the amount of $49,900 to Malding Jenkins of Columbia, South Carolina. The second action item is the approval of the change order in the amount of $43,246 for the drilling services at the Seneca landfill for the groundwater remediation pilot study for the solid waste department. Third action item is for the council to approve the IBT 9735 for the hauling and disposal of solid waste to the transfer station to the R&B landfill in Homer, Georgia. This is the third and final renewal of the requested 3 5-year renewal with Waste Management. This amount is estimated at $1,265,380 at this time, but the cost will not exceed the budgeted amount of $1,290,000. And the final action item is for the approval of the funding in the amount of $5,802,281 for Sandvik Mining Construction for the purchase of a mobile mining crushing plant for the rock quarry. We also have Mr. Charles Hillman here, who would answer any questions if anybody has any at that time. We have two council committee reports, one from Mr. Kane from June 5th, 2018 from the Planning and Economic Development Committee, and one from Ms. Kamick from June the 11th from the Budget, Finance, and Administration Committee. We have 4 items to discuss in executive session tonight. The first one relates to a contractual matter regarding Chaw-Ram Park. The second one relates to receiving legal advice relating to Rosa Clark's clinic. Third relates to search for the permanent county administrator. Fourth is related to an economic development matter regarding the extension of water line on Highway 11. And depending upon the discussions in our executive session, we may have 2 items to address. The first one being the approval and authorization to afford the execution and delivery of a letter to the Rosa Clark Clinic consenting to certain alterations to the county-owned property that the clinic utilizes. And these accommodations would be for them to use it for a medical and dental facility while providing free or subsidized services, and the appropriation of $210,000 in funding from the Economic Development Funds for the extension of a water line along Highway 11. That concludes my report and the agenda summary.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Next, we're going to hear a presentation from Upstate South Carolina Alliance, Mr. John Loomis.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and members of the council. Appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today. Unless I forget, I just want to thank Oconee County for your continuous support of the Upstate SC Alliance and what we do. Richard Blackwell is a great ally of ours. He's on our executive committee, and we work very closely with him on economic development efforts. Our role is marketing and trying to find prospects and leads all over the world to bring back to Oconee County and our other 9 counties. So I thank you for what you do. I feel like Oconee County is well represented with our executive committee, Richard Blackwell being an executive committee member as ex officio. Paul Kane just rolled off at the beginning of the year. Zach Kenton with Blue Ridge Electric Co-op is involved. Terrence Ford with AT&T, who serves this area, is involved. And I'm forgetting someone. Emily DeRoberts with Duke Energy is also involved. So Oconee County has representation from different people who are involved with our group. So again, thank you for your time, and I will try to be as quick as I can. I do have a presentation that we've put together for public sector audiences, county councils and city councils, and I'm basically going to talk about trends that we see in economic development and the type things that we think that the Upstate and Oconee County could do moving forward to be successful. And I will say that Richard and his team are right in lockstep, and they are probably ahead of what we are doing as a county in economic development. So I'll start now if that's okay. Economic development isn't the same as it was 25 years ago when BMW announced it was coming here. Manufacturing has changed. The world economy is changing. As home to nearly 500 firms from 34 different countries, the Upstate is part of the world economy. That means things are changing for us too. In the past, the Upstate Alliance has come to you with reports about what's already happened. Today, we're presenting data about what we project will happen. We're seeing new opportunities for communities in our region that we want you to know about, because we believe your community will leave money and jobs on the table if we don't respond to 3 major disruptive trends. Okay. The first major trend is the change in project size. Economic development success used to hinge on attracting large manufacturers. Bring in a big company, bring in lots of jobs, huge win. But fewer big opportunities will exist over the next 5 years. That's true here in the upstate, and it's true in every part of the U.S. Here's the data we've crunched and what it tells us. Major projects are down 50% over the last 10 years, not just here, but nationwide. For us, projects that bring more than 50 jobs or over $1 million in investment have declined. Meanwhile, middle market firms are where we find growth. When we talk about middle market firms, we talk about firms that have between 10 million and 100 million in gross revenues per year, and it's mainly the type projects that would have, a $10 million investment, 50 jobs, that kind of thing. Mid-sized companies have created the most new jobs, 70% of new jobs in the U.S. When we look back at the last 20 years, we saw something else. 86% of jobs created in South Carolina were by firms that are already here, your existing industry. This is where we see the best opportunities, attracting more mid-sized and small firms and helping your community expand your existing companies. Imagine a small technology firm relocates to your community. They come here to support one of the big manufacturing sectors. Automotive is an obvious one. This small firm adds to your economy quickly. They don't need a big infrastructure investment. They don't require a large skilled workforce you aren't able to provide. But they do hire local support staff, and for local services, they use a bank, an attorney, a CPA. They buy or rent office space, eat in your restaurants, shop with your merchants, support your local community projects. Imagine this one firm attracts other small firms that like what they see, or other companies that want to collaborate with them. These new small firms also come to your community, providing the same advantages without carrying the old economic development burdens. And you've got to go through those. There we go. You start to see how this disruptive trend can become a beneficial one in many ways. Small and mid-sized firms can bring money and jobs. To take advantage of it, first we had to recognize this opportunity. Now we have to build support. Reward our economic development teams for pursuing these smaller but valuable projects, and tell these economic development success stories in a way that gets people excited. The second disruptive trend we see goes hand in hand with the first one, because trend number 2 is a growing demand for innovation. When economic development is tied to manufacturing, you may worry about what innovation means. Maybe you worry it's a code word for automation, which will mean a reduction in hiring. But if we don't embrace innovation, if we don't equate innovation to fewer jobs, we're not going to attract new companies. So to respond to this second disruptive trend, our strategy at the Upstate SC Alliance is to be an innovation connector. Here's why innovation is critical to our plans. Our data shows that on average, it took only 5 employees in 2015 to produce $1 million of manufactured goods. Back in 1980, the same amount of production took 25 employees. Tasks performed by robots are expected to increase from 10% to 25% in the next 10 years. With automation, external sources and services are more important. Labor cost matters less. That's a big change for us to embrace because, as you know, labor cost has been a way we've sold companies on coming here in the past. Now manufacturers want to go where service firms and talent are available. We can take what we've learned from automotive and build on it. We are in a great position to become innovation specialists in aerospace and advanced materials too. Advanced materials is a broad category, and we've actually redesignated that as engineered materials, and can include anything from nanotechnology to new fabrics and fibers. An advanced materials focus helps our region take advantage of work being done by companies like Milliken and companies in automotive and aerospace. For all of us, the key to making the most of this trend is to embrace it, not view it as the end of manufacturing jobs, but as the key to building a strong regional economy. The third major trend that's changing the upstate is our expanding and changing role in the world market. As you know, we first attracted foreign companies to our region for the low cost of doing business here. Then we built infrastructure. We learned how to work in a global market. We perfected our exporting processes. Now, 25 years later, we are a great base for exporting. There are new ways for us to take better advantage of that and strong reasons to build our participation in the world marketplace. The numbers look good. Our region's economic development success has made us unique in the United States. Our share of jobs from foreign companies is twice the national average. We have a great platform for attracting even more foreign companies to the upstate, and a distinct advantage because of our established success. Bringing more foreign direct investment to our region will still be a top priority, but data shows us another way to take advantage of our connections to the marketplace of the world. Wealth around the globe is growing. From 2015 to 2020, more than 80% of global economic growth is projected to occur outside of the United States. This new and growing middle class will have spending power it's never had before. Everything we've done to bring foreign companies to the upstate puts us in a great position to help companies here and sell to the global market. At the Upstate SC Alliance, we can help our homegrown companies find customers by connecting them to Export 101 training, international commerce trips, and more. One example of how exporting can drive economic development is Just Aircraft, which is Oconee County's aerospace company that I hope all of y'all are familiar with. Just Aircraft opened its Walhalla production facility in 2002 before Boeing came to South Carolina. One of the reasons the company chose Oconee was for its access to the East Coast and ability to export overseas. The company produces sport and bush planes that are used in many terrains, enabling users to fly to remote locations through snow and ice and with little room for takeoff and landing. The company's employees rely on access to customer markets in Russia, Austria, and remote destinations where planes are used more often than cars. Their story demonstrates how exporting to overseas markets means opportunities at home, jobs at home, and additional investment. Our other opportunity, attracting even more foreign direct investment, is tied to this more important concept: marketing ourselves as a region. We need to remember how the world understands us. Even in the United States, people call us the Carolinas because they're not sure what's north or south. Now place yourselves in the shoes of executives halfway around the world. They don't know Greenville from Greer, Spartanburg from Seneca. They see us as a region on the map. For economic development, we're stronger when we work together as a region to market ourselves to them. Being even better at telling our regional story is one way we'll take advantage of this opportunity to bring even more foreign direct investment to the upstate. 25 years ago, getting one German manufacturer here was huge. Now we're at nearly 500 firms from 34 different countries and counting. Our connections to the world are more important than they've ever been. Our ability to tap into new markets through exporting is a big opportunity, and our proven ability to work together as a region is one of our great strengths. 3 major trends and so much information. Upstate leaders reshaped the state's economy 50 years ago by embracing change. That's why our region has had a strong plan. One reason your community in Oconee County has had great success. We're sharing our findings because we want you to see the changes that are coming and understand the rationale for how we're working at the Upstate SC Alliance. We also hope these trends will spark your ideas for new ways to approach economic development, and that these trends will provide new opportunities for us all. Thank you. I'll be glad to take questions if y'all have time. I hope I didn't go over my time limit.
Any comments, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you for all Upstate South Carolina Alliance does. It's a great partnership with us and continue to recruit industry for jobs and help us with talent for people to stay here. I think one of the things that I strive for with our education system here is to keep people to call South Carolina home like I do, like and call Oconee County home where I grew up. And it's not easy to go get a college education and find a job here, but here recently it's became so much better to where you can earn a great living here. And that's part of the partnership that we have with our school district and area colleges around here. And thank you for your partnership with Oconee County.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. John, and everyone here, I've had the opportunity to work with John and his team and Richard for several years now, and this is one of the best, if not the best, regional economic marketing organizations in this country, maybe the world, recognized across the state as a leader, and they do an incredible job bringing opportunities to the upstate from all over the world. If you look at their itineraries, they're literally all over the world, traveling to trade shows, telling the story about upstate South Carolina and about Oconee County and the other 9 counties that they represent. And I just want to thank you, John, for your leadership. And I mean, we obviously have some changes coming, and look forward to working with you as we continue to try to grow this economy, to increase wealth and bring jobs here and make it a place where folks from Clemson University can come with an engineering degree or with a biology degree and raise a family here. They don't have to move to the Research Triangle or Indianapolis to find those jobs. So thank you for what you do, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Mr. Kane, and thank you for your service on the executive committee for the last 2 years.
John, I got a question
Yes, sir.
for you. What happened to Volvo?
What happened to Volvo?
Yeah.
Why didn't it come to the upstate?
Yeah.
The basic reason for that is BMW is here in the upstate, and the automotive companies that have looked throughout the state have not looked as much in the upstate because of the workforce market. So that's one thing. The second thing, they were more port dependent on their operation, maybe even more so than BMW was, and so they had looked in Charleston, but they were looking for to be in that area where there wasn't another, another big dog like BMW, so they could stake their claim, I think. We tried, but they wouldn't listen.
I seen that factory down there.
Yes, sir.
Any other comments? I have a question. That's me.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. It sounded like it's come from over here.
We're trying hard to alleviate our own workforce shortages here. We'll be opening our own Tri-County Tech campus soon, which is an industrial campus that will help our industries get the workforce they need. I was just curious to know what other areas are doing.
Well, throughout our region, I mean, everybody is talking about workforce. Everybody in our region, everybody in the state, everybody in the country is talking about workforce. And I think that really Oconee County's partnership between the school district, the technical college, and the county is really one of the best that I've seen. Plus with the Oconee Anderson Pickens Showcase, getting the students to come in, I think that's been great. So I think Oconee County has been on the forefront of workforce development, what y'all are doing with your schools and your school district and involving teachers and principals and getting them in the process. I think that's important. But, throughout our region, there are other programs that people are doing that are being successful as well, but I think Oconee County is right at the forefront.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, one question on that point. The Tiger River campus over in Spartanburg and Anderson County with their soft landing projects, could you talk a little bit about that and what those do?
Tiger River campus at Spartanburg Community College, a building was donated to the community college, about 300,000 square feet, by a manufacturer that was leaving. And they've set up a program over there to help, incubate manufacturers and also to work with manufacturers that have announced coming into the county. For example, Torre used that facility when they were first starting up so they could get going before their building was built. Broza, which is a German automotive supplier, used that building before they got started up. So it's been a very successful program, and they've been able to get some companies over there, and we've helped with some of the leads to go over there. The second one you asked about was?
The recent Anderson County.
Anderson, yeah, with TTI. That's good. That's going to be a similar program, and I think that's very important. I know that the Oconee Incubator Facility here in Walhalla has had some companies, and I think there are 10 or 11 companies. This is a smaller facility, but I think y'all have a program that's really worked, and I was fortunate enough to work with that when I was at Tri-County Tech. So anyway, those are some examples of what other people are doing that are being successful.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank y'all again. Thanks for your support.
Thank you, John.
Okay, next on our agenda is public hearing for ordinance 2018-01, the ordinance to establish our budget. We have two people signed up for this public hearing, Ms. Jean Jennings.
I've got some things here I'd like to run by you, council, and I'm thinking it would be a way to save money. I would like to ask, I never did understand why the motor pool and everything went to Seneca and built on the belt line. And I'd like to ask, why is it the county dump trucks housed down there at the Wells Highway in Seneca? It would be much better to bring them back to the Camp Road where the county stores their culverts. It would be close to the rock crusher. With the dump trucks being stored in Seneca, they have to go through the most congested traffic. When you drive these trucks with no payload and getting 3 or 4 miles to the gallon of fuel, you're losing time and money. Why do you think the Hubbard's Paving Company leases property next to the rock crusher? It is to save time and money. They're running their business like a business should be run. And I'd like to mention the magistrate's office. In my opinion, I'd like to think the county could save about $300,000 by buying a building in Westminster. I'm sure those buildings would fit the magistrate's need. It may not be as fancy as the magistrate would like, but it would serve its purpose for the people, and it would save the county money. On the SROs, I would like to know why would the SROs need to drive a county vehicle? They can't leave the school. They can't transport. If there's a problem, they would call in law reinforcements. They need to drive their own vehicles to work and back home, just like they would if they were employed by some other company or whatever. And selling the land. The county needs to sell the land they're not using. They have several parcels near Five Forks and the rock crusher. They have land at the hayfield and across from the county offices. These two parcels were bought at different times when previous county council members had friends that wanted to sell the property. If this was sold, it would put some money in the county's coffer. And vehicles. I'm not sure if, who knows how many vehicles we have in Oconee County. How many vehicles that are owned by the county. How many is being driven in working hours? How many is being driven home by county employees? How many is being driven unnecessarily? In some cases, the county might want to start giving mileage reimbursements instead of spending money on vehicles, on gas and oil, wear and tear on the vehicle. the people driving their own car could keep a mileage sheet, and the county could tell them how many miles, the county would know how many miles they have driven and, you know, what needs to be spent. I can't see some people like possibly the probate judge driving a vehicle home at night. If there's a problem with his department, DHEC or the social services would take care of that problem. If it's a wedding, that should be done during working hours. And the sale of the county vehicles and equipment and furniture. There needs to be a county auction once or twice a year, selling all furniture, equipment, vehicles that's not being used. That would also put money into the county coffers. The county jobs. Most of our county employees don't work 40 hours a week. I would like to ask, how long does a county employee have to work before being put into the retirement system? What percentage of insurance does the employee pay, and what percent does the county pay? There's some jobs really in the county that's not a full-time job. Some people are busier than others. When an employee retires or is terminated, that job needs to be reviewed and see if some of the jobs can be combined. As for more money, what about people like myself? We're having to pay big county taxes, and we're on a fixed income, and we haven't gotten a raise from Social Security in years, and that's tough too. I believe that was everything that I wanted to cover. Okay, that's. I did also want to ask on the Westminster Fire Department, how many firemen are employed there? Is it Westminster city employees? Is it county employees? And I'd like to know who pays the utilities if it's both. Who pays? How much is each one, the city and the county, paying? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jennings. Mr. Markovich.
Good evening, Council. I am, for the record, Tom Markovich. I wanted to speak tonight about the budget in addressing a specific issue because it came up at the last council meeting and it involved what we call, quote unquote, a code enforcement officer. I don't know what happened at the budget meeting, and so I don't know if this ended up in our final budget, but nonetheless, I think having a budget, having a code enforcement officer is important. I think there's a lot of things that need to be addressed in this county. But I think we use the term code enforcement officer very loosely, okay? Number one, there's many codes, and they're not all created equal, and the code enforcement officers are neither created equally, okay? So what we're specifically talking about is the property maintenance code, because this is the mechanism that's going to allow you to go out and work on some of these properties that are not necessarily up to the standards that they need to be. So my suggestion is that if we're going to hire some sort of a code enforcement officer, that number one, they should be certified and have experience in the International Property Code. And because right now, to my knowledge, we only have one person who is qualified, and that is the administrator of the codes department. And he's qualified because he's an engineer, not because he's qualified in that particular code. But I just think it's very important that we begin to stipulate and make the difference, because these codes are not all the same. We need people who have got experience and really know what they're doing, especially for property maintenance. That is a difficult job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Markovich. Those were the only two who signed up for a public hearing. Anybody who would like to speak now and chime in? Anybody else would like to speak? Mr. Schuler?
Right here.
how much y'all know about Oconee County's most valuable resource. The Cherokee Indians used to think it was gold. But the most valuable resource we have is the Continental Divide. We're sitting right at the headwaters of the Continental Divide. People don't realize it, but the water that goes across the falls up there in New York City originates here in Oconee County. It is our water. It is not anybody else's water. Back in the days of the Old West, they used to fight for it. Everybody toted a gun on their hip. And whoever could protect their river protected their land. Now, Westminster right now is having a hard time with their water situation. I gave them a Freedom of Information Act yesterday to find out how much they are charging people who live outside the county just to upgrade things inside of Westminster. We need to be drilling wells. We need to be building water plants. And we need to be selling water. The Blue Ridge Continental Divide is it. It is the headwater of the entire East Coast. Every bit of water that falls on this side of the Appalachians goes into our water table. Everything that falls on the other side of the Appalachians goes into the water table that goes all the way to the state of Florida. The state of Florida has about used theirs up. That's the reason Atlanta is wanting our water. That's the reason everybody wants our water. We need to figure out, okay, how do we make a profit off of that water? How do we improve the county off of that water? When you talk about economic development, somebody ain't got nothing to drink, they ain't gonna build a building and run a business. What they gonna do, haul it in from dollar store? And anytime anybody would like for me to give a presentation on it, I'll bring the maps, I'll show you the water table, I'll show you how it runs, I'll show you exactly why we ought to be using our water. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else would like to comment about the budget, please? Written comments can be submitted to our clerk. And on that note, I'll close the public hearing for 2018-01. Public hearing for 2018-02, that's the school district's budget. No one signed up for that. Anybody wish to make any comments about the school district budget? Now's the time. Written comments can be submitted to our clerk. No one wants to comment on the school district's budget? Dr. Thorsland smiling. Okay, so on that note, I'll close the public hearing on 2018-02. Ordinance 2018-03 is the budget for the Keowee Fire Special Tax District. No one signed up for that public hearing either. Anybody wish to make any comments right now on the KOE Special Fire District? Okay, any written comments can go to our clerk, and on that note, I'll close ordinance 20, the public hearing for 2018-03. Third reading. We're going to start with the third reading of ordinance 2018-01, which is the budget for the county.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? I have a budget amendment I would like you all to consider, given the fact that Bo Horn had requested an extra fire vehicle. And there are a few other items on there. Sorry. Okay, this budget seems to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so what you have in front of you is kind of somewhat of a rearrangement of what we were looking at the other day in Budget Committee. From the available funds, we will, of course, support the pay increases for our employees. And it's kind of unfortunate, after giving them a moderate pay increase, that we're going to take it back in a tax increase. The fire personnel, and I'd like to add into the available funds section $310,000 for the roads and bridges equipment. From added millage, the sheriff personnel, the 7 SROs, and that additional fire truck. And by the way, we had been budgeting $350 for the fire trucks when it should have been $340. So you'll see that the 2 fire trucks are $680, and I believe we need to adjust the one that's already in the budget down to $340 as well. The High Falls upgrade and the deputy coroner. And then from added millage to the debt service, the magistrate. Mr. Martin.
Yes, ma'am.
The other day when we were looking at the potential site for a new magistrate's office, do we have any news on that?
Yes, ma'am. We gotten in touch with the realtor. We do have a kind of a soft number they're asking for the property. It's about $235,000, I think, plus or minus. They did ask the question if that was with or without the building that's on the property. We kind of told them we'd get back with them after tonight to see what the progress was.
Well, we can take that discussion back up in unfinished business.
Okay.
Okay, so the project's total then is $1.733 million. When I was doing my calculations, I used the value of a mill for 537,612 that was in our booklet. You're going to have to confirm the numbers, Liddell. Okay, and then in the side, on the right-hand side, you see our advertising expenses are as they are listed in our budget booklet. Administrator, $65,000, and down the line for a total of $113,950. I would like to recommend that we reduce the admin budget to $40,000 and give $20,000 to animal control for the concrete barrier that they need behind the kennels. This was something that they have been needing for several years now. Mr. McCall, if you recall, you and I went out there probably 3 years ago, and we looked at that area. The problem they're having is that there's no barrier between the kennels and the added real estate behind the kennels. And so when they're cleaning the kennels, the contaminated waste doesn't seem to make it down the drain. And in fact, it's flooding that backyard area that they would like to utilize, and they cannot utilize it for that reason. So for a couple of years now, they've been asking that we erect this concrete barrier so that when they're hosing down those kennels, the water will not flood the backyard and instead make its way down into the proper drains. So I would like to see us fund that once and for all and take care of that. The other comment I got from 2 of our employees is that, and I don't have the employee health insurance, so I don't know much about this, but they said we no longer support the Know Your Numbers program. We're not paying for that. And when I asked a few questions, I guess this was an annual or semi-annual health screen of lipids and blood sugar and whatnot. those, I don't get this because those are very inexpensive tests. In a typical clinical lab, you can do a lipid profile. It costs the lab maybe $2 to $3. So I'd like to devote some money. If we're going to promote health, then we have to do these health screens. So I would like to recommend that we set aside $5,000 and have that Know Your Numbers program. I find it very important. So those are my recommendations for a budget amendment.
Madam Chair, is there a reason why you didn't bring all this up in the budget meeting last Monday?
Yes, because I had no idea that I was going to even offer a budget amendment at our Budget Committee meeting last Monday. And I started playing around with the numbers when I talked to Bo Horn yesterday about the addition, yesterday evening actually, about the additional fire truck. So I was playing with these numbers yesterday evening. So I apologize for the short notice, but it is what it is.
He's looking for a motion, Madam Chair.
Well, let them digest this for a little bit.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
going through this, basically all of the savings, other than the reduction in the admin budget, is advertising. Is that correct?
No, 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 I'm not asking to reduce any of those. I just listed from our booklet the advertising budgets for each of the departments, so you would know what's been allocated to each of the departments. That's just for your information, and it's easier to look at it
Sure.
in a chart form rather than shuffle through the paper.
Okay.
So that's just for informational purposes only. And I was looking at the solid waste, the $10,000, but we've done a lot of advertising when it comes to recycling, and we've purchased all kinds of banners and whatnot for the convenience centers.
So, what is being, how are we paying for the fire truck? I'm not clear on that.
The additional fire truck?
Yeah, the third one.
With the millage increase.
No,
It's,
but we were at 3.08 at the Budget Committee meeting for this budget. And then it says here 3.22. Where are where are the cuts being made to pay for that? Because that's only, what,
are my numbers right, Liddell?
16/10 of a mil.
Are my
Sorry,
numbers
16
correct?
hundredths of a mil.
Are my numbers correct on
Yes,
this?
ma'am. I've checked them.
So,
Did everybody else have this before tonight?
No. Nobody had it before tonight.
Okay.
I'm telling you, I did this last night.
Making sure.
No, as a matter of fact, what they did have was another convoluted situation that I was hoping to come up with. After our Budget Committee meeting on Monday night, I really wanted to squeeze into the budget some assistance for the Salem Water Project. So I came up with a scenario where we could possibly do that, but my scenario was flawed in that it assumed that there was no money in economic development to do that project, where in fact there is, so there's no need to even add this project in here.
But the additional millage you're adding is only 77,328. Is that?
I have the same question.
7,000?
Yeah,
I
I
mean-
have the same question. If we're at 3.08 and we're going from 3.08 to 3.224, that's not enough to make up $340,000 for the fire truck.
I got
Well,
77K.
I mean, all my numbers are, I took the numbers out of what we were doing on our other sheet.
They don't add up. So,
Madam Chair, while if I could, while Ms. Price, Finance Director, is looking at the numbers and you all are going over this, just because I think a little bit in a linear fashion, and the fact that we've adopted on a first and second reading budgets that have included these items, and as opposed to modifying them in total,
Mhm.
I didn't know if it was possible to rephrase the motion. I guess we haven't got to a motion part yet, but to reframe it to really pluck out what is new expenditures. And as I understand it, the only new expenditures that I see are debits. I guess is the 310,000 for roads and bridges equipment. That is new,
Mhm.
right? And then the fire trucks, since we've already have one at 350, the additional would be another 330,000 for another fire truck, bringing us to the total of 680 for 2 fire trucks. So we have,
No, well, but you remember, one fire truck was already in the budget, okay? And then one we were going to add for a total of 2. Mr. Horn requested a third. So the one that's already in the budget is already in the budget. So these 2 fire trucks are the 2 added ones.
yes, ma'am, I understand. And then from second reading, the 350 was approved for that fire truck, and so this additional would be the 330, which would need approval tonight. Am I correct? All right, so that's 310 and 330, and then High Falls has already been approved on second reading.
Mhm.
The deputy coroner would be a reduction, as that was approved at 43,000, with the asterisk noting that it was going to be reduced by 35,000 if the state came through consistent with funding in continuity with the statute. I've not seen that that's happened yet, so I don't know if we're in a position
Well, it
to make that
hasn't happened yet, but everybody I spoke to said that that particular item is not an item that is being discussed right now. It's not an item of contention. As the state goes on working on their budget, they're only working on the things that they disagree on, and this wasn't one of them. So I have no reason to believe that we'll actually need the 43,000. You know, I get it, that they haven't voted on their budget. They're not going to till June 27th, but all indicators indicate that this is not going to be an issue.
So then we would have a debit of 35,000, so additions of 640, a debit of 35, but then there would be no other changes, correct? So that would be an addition of a total of 605,000,
Mhm.
which is about
0.71.
6,
On top of 3.08. No?
no,
It's not quite that.
that's not it.
Addition of it should be about, I guess it would be pretty
One
close
point
to
two
that.
mils additional.
Oh, I'm glad y'all have calculators.
I'm coming up with, based on what she has, had,
David, what was the additional?
What I had as an additional, just looking off of this sheet, and I'm digesting it now too, and I'm not the math guy, but, okay, so Ms. Price came up with 1.12 additional mills. Of course, this is all subject to our millage calculation that comes from the auditor in September, but the addition was additional revenue or expenditures, for 640,000 with a reduction of 43,000 for the deputy coroner. 35,000 of what was approved for 45,000 for the deputy coroner, which nets out an increase of 605,000, which we estimate to be a millage increase of 1.12. No, from what's been approved. So what hasn't been discussed was, and I don't want to shift there, I guess a motion needs to be made to do this, and then we can move on, was what came out of Budget Committee was for the capital vehicle and I think it was called Capital Vehicle and Equipment Replacement Plan. That was 1 mil. That's what brought us up to the 308 prospectively coming out of the Budget Committee. So I just wanted to get it out there. I think just the increase for this motion would be to add the roads and bridges, $310,000, add to fire trucks, $330,000, so they too can be funded, and reduce the coroner's line item for an additional position by $35,000 on the understanding that that money's coming from the state.
All right, so what's the total millage after all those subtractions, additions, and whatnot?
1.12.
No, I mean the total.
The total would be, all right, but that's including the one. 3.2, not including the capital vehicle and equipment that was discussed in the budget, in committee meeting, budget committee.
I know, that's why I gave them the 310, because those necessary vehicles,
605, you need
It's
close to a 4.2 mil increase.
Well, I think, so what you're saying is for the roads and bridges equipment, this 310 was for capital, this is for the vehicle
Yeah,
replacements?
right.
Okay, so it's just a reduction of what was contemplated at 530 to be 310, correct?
yes, so
Okay.
what is the total millage now?
Total was 3.2, correct?
Okay, so my numbers are correct then.
No way.
That can't be
Well,
right.
what it is, I think it's because it's not including the additional full mill that y'all talked about for the vehicles. So it's including, we were at, and Liddell, please speak anytime you want to speak. But let's run it through. Included within the original budget, or first reading, we jumped up 0.7 for the deputy coroner and the sheriff positions. On second reading, you increased an additional 1.17 for a fire truck and the High Falls 88 upgrades, plus 0.21 mils for the bond service on the magistrate building,
Right.
right? That brought us up to a total of 2.08. All right, and so now we're adding 1.12 with the additional numbers we just ran through, which brings you up to the 3.2. You know I'm the words guy, Mr. Kane, so I'm doing my very best.
Well, I
but
don't
I'm
see how we
putting it
added
together.
a fire truck and it only went up 70,000. And we
Which-
also added the roads and bridges equipment of 310,000 and it only went up $70,000.
What I believe we have to bear in mind is that we were still at a 2 mil increase after second reading.
I'm sorry, so okay, I got you.
So I think we had in our mind from the budget committee that we're already at 3.
So we're not reading the budget committee recommendation. Okay, all
No,
right,
sir.
gotcha.
It addresses the vehicles, but at a $310,000.
So what happened to the recommendation coming out of the budget meeting that was 4-0?
Assuming y'all are gonna talk about that.
Well, my problem was the addition of the extra fire truck put us way too high on a millage increase for many people who are, Social Security dependent. We're trying to give a modest increase to our employees. We're going to turn around and take it in a increase in property taxes.
I
So
hope we're not giving $12 raises
we're
a year.
not, but it's,
I mean-
the point is, let them enjoy their pay increase. And so I took, some money, and added it for the roads and bridges, and I gave the fire truck and tried to keep the millage below 3.5. The millage increase below 3.5.
I think that's probably a fair way to say it. As I'm catching up, it would be splitting that 1 mil that was talked about during the budget committee for capital vehicle and equipment, 310 for capital vehicle and equipment, the remainder to the fire truck, plus the savings from the coroner, plus a little bit more of a tax increase to get your extra fire truck. That's the essence of it. If you want to frame that as a motion, you can do that as stated by the county attorney, if everyone feels comfortable that I recited it accurately.
Wouldn't it make sense to first bring the recommendation out of the budget committee to amend the budget and then work off of that?
It's open right now. It makes sense to me. That's the way I anticipated it, but Ms. Kamick presented that. So right now, there's no motion on the floor.
Okay.
So whoever wants to make a motion.
Make a motion.
I make a motion.
Which motion is that?
What's the motion?
What the attorney said.
What Mr. Root rattled off.
So that's the recommendation out of the budget committee meeting.
No,
that's not
it's
the
the
way-
current recommendation on the table.
So we don't need any more budget meetings next year, Mr. King?
The motion, as stated, as I kind of recapitulated it, was to add, excuse me, back to my other sheet. To add $310,000 to the vehicle equipment, capital equipment and vehicle replacement plan. Add $330,000 so that we can effect a second fire truck purchase and reduce the deputy coroner line item by $35,000. So when Mr. McCall is saying, as a county attorney stated, that was what I stated.
We're holding the millage increase at 3.224, correct?
I believe that would be the millage. Those numbers seem accurate, and Ms. Price confirmed those. And again, I have to underscore the fact that we have to deal with the solid dollar figures. The mills will be ascertained with some certainty in September, when Ms. Hubbard brings her recommendation as auditor. And also the fact that we cannot approve, or you all cannot approve, a millage increase that goes to the hundredths. So it'll round up to likely 3.3.
Mhm.
All right, how much is this, as I stated, how much of an increase does it cost for the average property owner?
Not much.
$4 per
Four.
100,000.
4 times 3
It's a
is
little-
12.
it's
It's
right-
about 13 per 100,000.
$13?
Yes, per 100,000.
Unless you have the homestead exemption. The first 50,000 would not be counted in that figure.
Who is eligible for homestead exemption?
If you're 65 or older, if you're disabled, and there's a third category that's exempt from the first 50,000 of their.
Disabled is no property tax. You don't pay anything if you're disabled. On your house, 65 or over, you get a discount on the first 50,000.
And I think if it's husband and wife, do they get 50 each if they're both on the title? No, it's just 50. Okay.
One time.
Per 100,000. And $12.80 per $100,000 assessed value on a home. Of course,
Per meal?
No, for the, if you went at 3.2 increase,
Mhm.
that's the total. And per meal is,
Per meal will be about $4.
so I believe you have a motion and a second on that, so this would open up for discussion. This might be the time to bring up the budget committee.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask, is how is the, excuse me, how is this different from the budget committee last Tuesday, coming out of there?
It adds a fire truck.
Well, we don't get to decide to buy a fire truck. That's up to the administrator to decide what piece of equipment to buy. That's kind of why we left that last meeting in there. Obviously, there is several needs, including fire trucks. My issue is that we're still barely funding. You're leaving out your other 300,000 for your pay increases next year that is going to have to come across our budget. There's, so, that's, puts you at 3.61 if you actually fund the, full cost of the pay increases. And you use that additional money this year would be in there for vehicle replacement plan, and next year would be to fully fund that vehicle replacement plan, so you're not so far behind. And that puts you at 3.61.
Yeah, but you're hoping that the fee in lieu are coming online, and other industries are gonna start paying taxes that have just moved here. They're moving off their fee in lieu of.
Well, and I'm hoping that we don't add any additional expenses, and I know that that's gonna be the case too. I mean, $300,000 on top of our other additions that we have in this county in expenses. I mean, you're putting yourself behind going into next year. And I would be in favor of what y'all are proposing. If it included that.
So I'm still trying, because the last budget we talked about was in the budget committee meeting, I'm still trying to figure out exactly how this new proposal is different than what we talked about. What does this proposal take out? And what does it, I know it adds a fire truck, and it also adds roads and bridges equipment, is that correct?
I believe as Camet contemplated it, there's a specific allocation for the equipment purchases, but in reality, the numbers are, you had 530 coming out of the budget committee, 1 mil for capital vehicles and equipment replacement, and now that number, in essence, has jogged up to 640. Because we're looking at fire truck and then what was on the spreadsheet here as roads and bridges equipment. So this is just an increase looking at it that way. It's just specifically allocated for items. And then you have the reduction for the coroner position. That's the essence of it.
But again, we're talking about adding a $340,000 asset and subtracting a 40 or 30-something thousand dollar payroll item, right? If we subtract we credit the coroner back into the account and we debit the fire truck out of the account, the third fire truck, that's 340,000, 330,000. That is more than whatever 0.16 mils.
Need to be a CPA or something.
Yeah.
So what we had one with the administrator's approved budget was included a fire truck.
Mm-hmm.
And then on second reading, you all funded the second fire truck at 350. That motion to amend was made and passed. And so now we're looking to enable 2 fire trucks to be purchased, to add another 330 to that, because the fire truck cost is 340 as opposed to 350, so you can get 2 obviously for 340 each. So it's just, if you're looking at equipment, it's an equipment allocation, and instead of it being 530, as was discussed, budget committee, it's 640.
Right, but our discussion was based off of items, and I guess that's what's confusing me. You know, we need to buy this piece of equipment because it's going to be a problem, and that's the way I'm remembering it.
Right, and the 2
We'll
most
have a tax
significant
increase
pieces of
next year for those pieces
Yeah.
of equipment, since we're not going to, we'll worry about that next year. That's kind of where we're at.
And if you would rather leave the coroner at 43, that doesn't really change much, and that'll give you a few extra dollars to play with somewhere else. That doesn't move me.
And to bear in mind,
Mm-hmm.
you have a millage cap increase each year. You all have not increased taxes for a number of years, so that has accumulated based on CPI, and I forget the other factor that goes in, but it rolls over, and I think we're right at 5.99 is the most that you could increase this year. The only reason I say that, you're not approaching that. The only reason I say it is to be mindful for next year's budget, because that rollover is going to obviously be reduced. Side note, not to convolute.
Yeah, so do you want to leave the coroner at 43 or whatever that was? Would that
Well,
make you feel better?
well, I mean, it
Instead of having Dave
doesn't make
Johnson?
me feel better. I mean,
Or would
you
you
know,
feel
next year,
safer?
we got to come up with close to more than $500,000, because we're going to be even further behind. What would make me feel better would be to, again, fund the project in its entirety. the pay increases, use that additional funds that we are getting off the millage for vehicle replacement, plan. That would be an additional. Y'all having fun out there yet?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Davis, if I could, to make sure I understand what you're discussing, we've previously approved the raises for the county employees at 323, and you're referring to the fact that those are implemented on a rolling basis based on date of hire, so next year, the full funding of that is going to be 323 plus X.
630, I believe, is what we had
Total
used.
is 630? Okay, so we're going to be,
So that's 0.6 of a mil there.
yeah.
We can count on an increase next year,
So,
plus any vehicles that we're not funding right now. If we're deferring that for another year, that cost will build on top of our current, next year's.
And I understand this all
Yeah.
plays into this milieu of how the funds are allocated. I mean, if it helps to vote on this motion and then bring up the salaries, then, again, I say I try to think, or it helps me to think in a linear fashion, and that might keep things clean.
Okay.
But if you want to do it and talk about bringing it all at one time with the employee, what would fund the raises next year too, then
so I'd make a motion to amend the agenda. It'd be 3.84
So amend the agenda.
budget.
Well, we have a motion and a second for the first budget that was proposed. Can we vote on that?
It sounds to me like you got your votes up here, so, I mean, I'm,
Fine, okay, so let's vote on that, and then we'll talk about any other changes that you would like to have, and keep it a little bit cleaner rather than a mixture here. So is there any further discussion on this particular scenario?
Madam Chair, to keep us clean and from a parliamentary manner, the coroner's position was with the reduction of 35,000 you spoke of adding that back in, but the motion was made with it being funded at 8,000, so minus the 35. All right, so if you want to amend that, restate your motion to include the coroner at 43, then have your, then proceed from there, that would be good. If that's your intention.
Okay, well, I will restate my motion to include the coroner, just in case the state changes its mind, although I'm not expecting that to happen, and no one I've spoke to is expecting that to happen.
And then we still have Mr. McCall, a first and a second on the motion is restated.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, any other discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Paul, did you vote?
I voted in
Carry.
favor. So, to Mr. Davis's point, we now have a budget that's amended at 3.224 mil increase, but we still need to talk about the employee raises that will come full freight next year, roughly 300,000 in additional that we know is going to be in next year's budget. So that's something that we know is gonna, it'll be a millage increase next year. Spoiler alert.
Hey, Paul, why don't we look and see what industry's gonna kick in by next year, get a projection on that. So we won't have to paint a gloom and doom thing right off the bat, It might be industry's gonna take up the slack.
Well, that also assumes that our budget is static from an expenses standpoint otherwise, and that's what I'm concerned about. As this county grows, so do our costs. And I know that there's more revenue projected, fee in lieu of, and probably new construction, residential and commercial be helpful, but we don't know how much that is right now, do we?
But wouldn't, the question I have, wouldn't the growth offset some of the expenses, or these people we're not growing for free? Wouldn't we consider that as part of to offset the expenses you just mentioned?
No, I agree. I mean, I think that some of it, I don't know what it is. I mean, I thought the reassessment would have given us a lot more. It didn't.
But then again, it was also a surprise that we had 933,000 extra in revenue that we allowed us to fund a bunch of things. That was not really expected either, so.
Do we have any projections on next year's increase in revenue?
No, sir, not at this time, we don't.
So assuming that the revenue growth covers the additional 300,000 we need in the employee raises, I still have concerns about the capital equipment replacement. And as Mr. Beck discussed, there are serious problems there, and if we don't address them this year, they stack on top of next year's funding shortfalls. And that's what I'm concerned about, in addition to the employee raises.
Well, next year we'll have to look at, see what, any additional, whether the growth is gonna offset it, or industry growth is gonna offset it. It would only be fair to do it that way.
Well, I'm just concerned about this year's shortfall in the capital equipment replacement, which is, based on this budget, 900,000, is that right?
The 1.4, the shortfall prior to this,
So
800.
800,000. That's this budget that we're talking about right now, the shortfall for this budget year, 800,000. Plus 300,000 in employee raises. So we got to make up $1.1 million in new revenue for that fiscal year. Well, 800,000 for sure.
To keep up with those items, yes, sir.
I mean, that's,
Yeah, but we got one plant that I know of is fixing to double in size within the next year and a half. They've already gone by a third, and now they're fixing to jump the road and actually double the whole physical size of the plant, which is excellent for the county.
I agree.
And,
But if it doesn't come online, if the taxes are not collected next year on that growth, we are not paying for the equipment that we need to buy next year.
But at the same time, we can't saddle everybody with a big increase in taxes. I'm talking about the people I have to help, that's who I have to worry about. I'm not trying to be hard about it. I guess this is it, hey, Mr. Attorney.
I'm listening.
Is it proper for me to ask Mr. Martin to ask the delinquent tax collector how many people are on the verge, not bums and degenerates, but actually people that are really in need, on the verge of losing? Is that a proper thing I can ask the administrator to ask them?
I'm sure tomorrow?
No.
I doubt he knows the answer,
Right
and Ms. Thomas is not here right now, and that delinquent tax collection process is a very fluid one.
Well, I mean, they got an idea of the people that are in need, real need.
Ask away.
I'd rather you not ask me now. Just allow me some time to do a little research.
I wouldn't
And
answer right now. I was just wanting.
But I can get you that information. Yes, sir, I can get that
A couple weeks will
information.
be fine. It doesn't make any difference.
Okay, I will do that.
I'm not talking about the people that are,
We'll just kind of get some kind of figures, see what kind of shape, if that's the word we want to use, of,
because we say, Rena, I'm asking, we have one, the church that handles it,
We can probably get some charts or some graphs.
We saved one house for $50, and I thought it was unheard of. And I'm just kind of worried about, regardless what goes on, these people in need.
Okay. I'll do my best on that and get that back with y'all.
Okay.
And Wayne, I fully agree with you that we need to be mindful of that situation.
Well, wouldn't it be fair to wait until, see what the budget's gonna be like next year?
But this is for next year's, this is for the budget.
Not,
We're not funding this year's. We're
you know
not,
what I'm talking about, the following budget after this one.
Well, but we'll have an $800,000 shortfall this year in capital equipment replacement. And this year, the budget year beginning on July 1st in, a week and a half.
Well,
That's what I'm concerned about right at this moment, is that next fiscal year's shortfall. It's $800,000.
yeah, but we have $800,000.
We've deferred a lot of these expenditures, trying not to do mill increases, waiting for reassessment, which we then had to delay a year, and then we found out that it didn't produce enough to cover these deferred
I think,
expenditures.
Paul, in all fairness to the taxpayers, I think we ought to, give them a break of some kind. I mean, I see your point, but it's still, I'm always hoping something else comes online or something comes along.
I am too.
We can't, I worry about people becoming homeless and, there was a person a long time ago in the past, it was up here, and they said that, if the people can't pay the taxes, they should sell it to somebody that could. And I thought that was the most heartless thing I've ever heard in my life. That kind of stuck with me. Certainly what anybody up here. So I'm just worried about that. I worry a lot for no reason at all, so.
I think all of us care about everybody in this county, and that's one of the things why we do a lot of the things throughout the county to help those people constantly with roads and different things that we do. And, I know about the good work that you do as well. And I know that is very appreciated in this county. I'd make a motion to amend the budget that would include, it would take to 3.7, which would include, is that 247,000 additional. That would also include a code enforcement officer and our vehicles for this year. And that doesn't get us 100% on that, but that's $100,000, I believe, less than what we need. So that would be, what is that increase?
It's $500,000 on top of what we already have. I'll second the motion.
And just to clear that up just a little bit, that would be, one of the things that I was going to talk about, Madam Chair, was when we funded the deputy coroner at 43, if they came out and said that they were going to fund that, I was going to propose that we would use that additional revenue to hire a code enforcement officer at that time. But that got taken out of that last amendment. So that's kind of why I was putting that back in along with those vehicle replacement. That money would go toward vehicles for this current budget year. The following budget year, that money would get us to where we're finishing out those raises, so the council doesn't have such a budget crisis. And I do not want a tax increase next year. And as it stands right now, I feel like you're a 1.5 to 1.7 next year, and I don't think that's fair to do 2 tax increases.
How's that different than doing it all at once or doing it?
Because you're behind the 8 ball next year for the money that you need this year.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Davis, I understand your motion in dollars. You said 247,000? Did I hear that correctly?
That's correct.
All right, and that was split between the code enforcement officer, and that number we put out at 60 or 75? 60. And so the remaining 187 would be allocated toward the
Vehicle replacement.
Toward the vehicle replacement.
So what does that bring the total millage increase to now?
Here in 3.7.
3.7.
And Mr. Martin has some information.
Now, I know we're talking about codes enforcement. We are in discussion with a possibility of maybe having a candidate that we're looking at later in the week that would maybe have the credentials for codes enforcement already. And we're talking about maybe doing some type of a split between codes enforcement and or building codes. So that's something that we already have in the process in this year's budget. It is a job we have open at this time that we're trying to piggyback off of,
That works.
if that helps you out any. If that works out. Now, we still haven't talked to the individual.
I'll still stay with my motion.
Okay.
Well, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this for a total millage increase of 3.7? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Do we have one more vote on the ordinance as amended?
More, but
More.
not as difficult as those. So unless there's any other monetary motions, we have some language that you all asked to be changed, and in regards to fees, and some ancillary ones. First motion, we need to amend 2018-1 to incorporate the new language and budget proviso, section 11, to comport with the Budget Committee's recommendation regarding the default allocation for multi-county industrial park revenue.
So
That's
moved.
highlighted in your motion, in your budget.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Next, in the fees portion of your budget, I believe you all received the letter from the Board of Zoning Appeals regarding application fees for appeals, variances, and special exceptions, increasing that from $100 to $200. Need a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Again on fees, and this is page 7 of 7, from the Solid Waste Department. They have been charging $1.50 per waste tire for disposal, and that's just a cumbersome procedure to do it that way, as I understand from Mr. Steele. So the change is $150 per ton. It's in red within your ordinance, and so we need that amendment to make it easier to accept the waste tires and
So moved.
Second.
charge that fee.
Any discussion on that?
Yeah, I just want, aren't we already paying, not the county, but aren't we already paying when you buy a tire, they already charge you $2 disposal fee when you buy just a regular car tire?
That sounds correct, yes, sir.
There's an
Why aren't we
allocation,
getting it then?
and I dealt with Mr. Swain on this a couple years ago, that there is a charge on that, and then the folks who dispose of a tire can show a return that they've paid that, and then this fee is waived. So
They don't rate it to the customer.
they do, and Mr. Steele could probably, if he's here, can you speak to that? I'm sure he could do a much better job than I can, because I've just left my memory.
The fee is for waste tires, not for new tires that you're buying. These are for tires, people go out and buy a tire from a vendor and they have no proof that they actually paid the $2 fee for. If you go and buy a used tire and put on your car, and then you turn around and you want to throw that tire away, there has been no fee paid for that tire that they have bought for. So this fee is just for a waste or a used tire that they have been paying. Right now, if you come and show us proof that you have paid for that tire, then we waive that charge.
Yeah, but you buy a tire, right, wherever you buy it at, on your bill, it's got $2 disposal fee. And even though they took the tire off your car, put a new tire on, they still charge you $2.
Right, but you're supposed to leave that tire with them for them to dispose for that fee. So if they take that tire home with them, or if you buy a used tire, then that fee is gone somewhere else, and they get to claim that money back, and when the state does not receive any of that money funding.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second on the tire issue. All in favor?
All right. Within the fund balance, assigned fund balance, for the last couple of years has been carried over an amount. You'll find this on page 10 of 10 of the budget document within the provisos. Section 13 notes the assigned fund balances. The transportation fund balance has been carrying $300,000 within it, and that was for a matching grant with Seneca for the low or no emissions cat bus. And for the past couple of years, Mr. Mulder has sent a letter to the DOT saying, we've got this money, it's been appropriated within the budget, we are committed to the project that Seneca is doing, and we have this money to match the grant. Mr. Mulder, obviously, now that he's with Seneca, didn't want that letter to carry, and we're approaching a new fiscal year with that money still there. So we felt it cleaner for Mr. Martin to issue that letter and for him to feel comfortable for you all to say, yeah, I've got the money, please issue the letter.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Last one. So on this, at a budget committee, you approved an additional park ranger for the Chow Ram Park. Is going to be budget neutral, reallocate salaries using local ATAX funds. If we could just have that approved here.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Does that conclude all the amendments?
That's all I had.
Okay. So we need to approve ordinance 2018-01 as amended.
So move. Second.
Any final comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Ordinance 2018-02, which is the school district's budget. Need a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Ordinance 2018-03, the Keeley Fire Special Tax District.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Second reading, ordinance 2018-13, an ordinance amending Chapter 32 of the Oconee County Codes of Ordinances, and this is regards sign control.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ordinance 2018-15, an ordinance amending Article 10 of Chapter 38. This is in regard the numbers to identify the zoning matrix.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
2018-16 is the ordinance regarding solid waste management.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
As Mr. Martin alluded to at the beginning, solid waste, Mr. Still has asked for a couple of amendments to the ordinance.
Okay.
As consistent with prior practice, I have a highlighted version. And if you look on page 6 of the highlighted version, which is the second version of the ordinance, the attachment following the ordinance, you'll see within section 7, subpart B for the C&D landfill, subsection 5 and 6 are added. All vehicles must weigh in for processing of solid waste and fees. That's new. That's existing, but it's in a new position. The new language is any loads mixed with large amounts of recyclables such as brush, wood waste, concrete, asphalt, brick, et cetera, may be disposed of in a landfill if attached, must be separated. If they're attached to other waste, they may be disposed at the landfill. If disposed at the landfill, they'll incur a double tipping fee. And the other one was fees will be waived for any waste processed as a clean recyclable. That was the first request from Mr. Still for an amendment.
Motion to amend.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
Yeah, one quick question. On those bricks and mortar items that we have on the dump, are we grinding those up and have a possibility of selling any of that stuff instead of dumping it into our landfill?
Yes, sir. In due time, what we're doing with it now is we're using it around the landfill itself, and also the road department will have access to it. Once we get all that material recycled, or, there's always a possibility to do something else with it, but right now we're just going through the learning processes with that and making sure we got the personnel to make sure that stuff runs.
Is there a way that we can incentivize the recycling of that material where it's separated out from our builders that are bringing that, to help them with their cost of doing away with their waste if they have a portion that's recycled? Is there something, I know that's kind of changing where we're at, but I just thought about that, to incentivize them to recycle, to help them with their fees.
And if I'm not mistaken, we do not charge them if they bring it in that way.
Okay.
If they dump it. Is that right, Swain?
That's correct.
So we do not charge
Perfect.
if it's clean.
Already
something
done.
That we can do, that we can use.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions on this?
Y'all haven't voted on the First Amendment,
I
correct?
know, and
Right.
was there more?
There's an additional one. We can do it as one if you're good with it. It's just on the next page, subsection 3 in highlights. Mixed loads that can be properly processed through the transfer station will incur double the approved tipping fee due to either containing large amounts of recyclables that are not being recycled or containing construction and demolition debris that could otherwise be disposed of in the C&D landfill. So this applied to the transfer station. Another request from solid waste. Mr. Still.
So move.
Any discussion or questions on this? Okay, are there any other amendments?
No, ma'am. So we're just combining those two.
Two into one amendment? Okay. So we're voting on this ordinance as amended?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just checking. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. First reading, ordinance 2018-18, an ordinance amending Chapter 38 regarding the Board of Zoning Appeals, specifically in relation to notification of the hearings and actions thereof.
Madam Chair,
2018-17.
we hadn't voted on the litter control one. Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry,
2018-17.
2018-17, an ordinance rewriting, revising, and amending Chapter 12 of the Oconee County Code of Ordinances regarding litter control.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Madam Chair.
Yes,
I'm
there's amendments
really
there,
gonna do
too.
my variance. This is minor, section 7
Mm-hmm.
on page 3, sub-item 1B. Says, you'll see the reference for enforcement in accordance with section 8.2 below. That should simply be 7.2, just a scrivener's error. There is no
Okay.
section 8.2.
Do we need a motion to amend?
Second.
If you could, thank you.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 2018-17 as amended.
Madam Chair, can we take a 5-minute recess?
Can we just vote on this?
Vote on that?
Yes, you can vote on that, and then we can,
2018-17 as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Madam
Okay,
Chair,
now-
can we have a
Yes, yes.
5-minute recess, please? That's the motion.
What time is it?
It is 8:15.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Convene.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we're at first reading. Ordinance 2018-18. An ordinance amending Chapter 38 of the Oconee County Court of Ordinances. This is regarding the Board of Zoning Appeals, specifically in relation to notification of the hearings and actions. Did we do that?
So moved.
Second.
I guess we didn't. Any discussion on this?
You announced it before 2017, and then I tried to
Okay.
screw you up on 2018-17 by making a motion to.
That's
so,
fine.
Yeah, it was.
So we're good. Any discussion on this one? All in favor?
Aye.
2018-19, an ordinance amending Chapter 38 in certain limited regards and particulars regarding general provisions and other matters.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
2018-20, that's the balloon testing.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on this?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
I want to caution. This, on the planning commission, when they did orientation for Mr. Richards, the state said, and whoever was doing the orientation, we have no right to regulate a federal tower. That's at the FCC. And I want to caution you, we do not want to get in a big contest with the feds over trying to control communications tower. They tried it before with the cell phone towers. Cell phone towers are very expensive. They don't just put them up for grins. They put them up for a very expensive reason. And when you want your cell phone to work, or you don't want it to work. They tried the same thing with the amateur towers, and it didn't work too well for them. They had all these senators, U.S. senators and congressmen, and they backed down on that. Just a word of caution. Okay.
Any other comments on this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
The, just to kind of give some clarification, the balloon testing is to show a view site analysis. It's not the tower itself, correct?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
All right, just so we're all clear here. And I think the other thing with any of these communication towers, and as we move forward on this board of zoning appeals and the different things that we have, not everybody's going to be happy with, what we're doing, where a tower's going to go. But I do commend this council for making decisions so people actually know what is going on, because to me, all of these ordinances, specifically 2018-20, are working toward communication with our citizens. So I just wanted that to be out. And I know the communication towers, just like Mr. McCall said, they're not the most wonderful thing to look at, but when your cell phone doesn't work in the middle of a field, or you're driving home and people can say, oh, I know you're on your way home, your cell phones are breaking up, that's what we're getting upset over. So, those are the things that we have to give up for the wonderful things we call cell phones. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other comments?
I just, actually, yes, I think Mr. Schuler was the one that mentioned it. Maybe it was a Barry. I don't remember which one mentioned the cell towers that look like trees. I don't think that's a bad idea. And I don't know how much additional that costs for a cellular company. But I think it is something that this council should consider as a requirement to put up any new cellular towers in the county. I mean, you could still, it's not a real tree. I mean, we're not in a redwood forest over here, but it does look a lot better than a tower. I know it.
It's the hokiest tree you ever saw in your life. A pine tree is 185 feet tall.
Hokiest. That's the greatest word I've ever heard you say, Wayne.
It is amazing.
We just, not kudzu. Kudzu doesn't count.
But I've also seen them painted so that they blend in a little bit more.
That'd be nice too.
Madam Chair, if I could just quickly to speak to both of those concerns, this isn't a new communication tower ordinance. This is one that we've gone through a year and a half ago. We had a consultant in to make sure we complied with all federal and state law. It's a tight ordinance. This is just adding the view shed and balloon testing analysis. And the ordinance as it exists encourages co-location and stealth design, which would be a tree or a big clock or whatever. So
Can we
it's-
require stealth design without getting sued?
I don't believe so, because it's gonna be circumstance specific, and I'd have to look back. The language that encouraged the co-location, because these are granted if they're over 75 feet by special exception only, you're gonna fare a lot better if you have a co-location or a stealth design. So it comes really close without going that far.
Okay.
Any other comments on this? All in favor of 2018-20?
Aye.
Opposed? 2018-21, ordinance amending Chapter 32 regarding communication tower applications, which may be administratively approved by the Community Development Director and other matters related thereto.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion on this one? All in favor?
Aye.
2018-22, another ordinance amending Chapter 38. This is regarding the Lake Residential District setbacks.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion about this? All in favor?
Aye.
2018-23, an ordinance establishing the fund balance policy for Oconee County.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion on this one? All in favor?
Aye.
No first and final readings. We do have some action items. The financial auditing services.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, this is a two-part ordinance. Recommending the council approve the award of RFP 17-11, financial auditing services to Molden and Jenkins, and the second is to authorize the county administrator to renew the contract for an additional 4 years. Any discussion on this?
Yes, Madam Chair. The budget is at 55,000, but the amount we're approving is 49,900. Is there a contingency that is needed so you don't have to come back and say, oh, it's 51,000 this year?
No, sir, if I remember correctly, all 5 years are the same price.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
I just didn't want you to come back for a nickel.
I'll give it to them.
Any other discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Drilling services for the Seneca landfill groundwater remediation pilot studies, solid waste for $43,246.
So moved. Let's change order.
Change order, yes.
Second.
Any discussion on this?
Yes, ma'am.
Mhm.
Why is this, they started off with, let's say it's gone up half again. Why is that?
Doing the process, they realized that they need to add about 7 more holes or wells that they need to drill and add all the product and everything just to make everything work. So they've had to add more wells than what they thought.
Just within last year's, this 43,246 is still, well, is this gonna come from the reserves from last year? Left?
I would assume so, yes, sir. Swain, would that be a correct statement? I come kind of in on the tail end of that one where it came from, but I would assume it would.
This is still coming out of the solid waste reserve fund.
Okay.
Yes.
So it does, okay. I'm just trying to figure out, so this isn't coming from what we were trying to do in the fund balance. This is your reserve fund
This
that you
is the solid
currently
waste
have on there.
reserve fund, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this?
Is there any other change orders that they think, or they think this is?
No, we
the-
think this might get it taken care of. We're hoping.
Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Hauling and disposal of solid waste.
So move.
It's a two-part. Second.
Yes, this is also a two-part. Approve the third and final 5-year renewal. for the hauling and disposal of waste to Waste Management Incorporated, Homer, Georgia. And the second part is that we authorize the county administrator to renew this contract for the next 4 years. Any discussion on this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, go ahead.
Back when I was presenting my solid waste plan, Mr. Mueller said, I quote, he said, well, if we don't if we don't haul it off, we're gonna have to pay them anyway. If we were to cut the tonnage down, we still gonna have to pay the whole amount whether we use it or not?
No, sir, I'm sure if we didn't haul as much over, we wouldn't have to pay as much.
Because in the other scenario he gave me, well, the price will go up. I'm just going by what I was told when I was fighting for my.
No, sir, I think once we have them with a contract, we are where we're at with them. It does all depend on the tonnage that we ship.
And so if we only ship 1 or 2 truckloads, which I know won't happen, we're still gonna pay the same price per ton if we ship the amount we contract for. Okay, that's fine.
Madam Chair, if I may. Mr. McCall, what was the cost of that recycling plan that you'd put together and the savings to this? Because you had all that, was it last year that you had that? With the plan that you?
Year before last, and then once again, before you got on council, it always got shuffled to one side. I even redesigned the convenience centers, and that was, nothing was done there. You know, we got a chance to really hit it big in the recycling. Mr. Still has been more than helpful, but I was held back for other reasons. Anyway.
So my reason for stating that's something that you could bring back up and get a proposal, or ask, I guess we could direct to get a proposal back up.
I got the whole thing written out.
But there was a specific cost, I guess, associated with that.
Yeah.
But savings too.
Yeah, savings, but my plan involved pilot programs like we do in industry. And, the former administrator wanted to make what we call the big splash. You know, just throw a lot of money at it and see if it'll cure itself. And you can't do that, because maybe my plan would work in the lower part of the state and won't work up here. You don't know, so you go ahead and pilot programs.
Mr.
Give you the whole thing.
That'd be good.
Design keys in it.
Mr. Martin, this contract that we have with Homer, Georgia's for 5 years, if for some reason we decreased, obviously, the amount that we're hauling, obviously that decreases that. If we went with such a plan that would work, the reason to have the 5-year, there's a chance that Homer, Georgia can tell us we don't have any room for that anymore, correct?
I would assume that would be correct, or we could change our mind also.
And the secondary plan beside Homer, Georgia would still be Anderson?
I would say so, yes, sir. Again, this is some of the new stuff that I'm getting used to. I'm not seeing the proposal that Mr. McCall is talking about, but I am sure that there would be another alternative if something happened in Homer, Georgia.
Okay. I'd be interested in seeing renewing that plan as we move forward, because I think it's something that we need to start looking at. So.
Yes, sir.
We also talked at one point, maybe a year or so ago, Paul, you might recall this, where other areas were interested in actually purchasing our trash. So we were actually thinking of buying our own vehicles and transporting our own trash to those areas and selling it to them. And when we looked at the proposal at that point in time, it would have actually saved us money to do it that way.
That's another proposal that I can look. I'm sure Mr. Steele's familiar, because he's been here long enough to have seen Mr. McCall's and probably this one. I can set some time with him here in the next week, 10 days, and see if we can't go over some of these just to get familiar with and bring them back up to you and let you look at them.
Well, I know this stuff is hauled off. It's not dumped in our landfill. You know, people always, oh, we're filling our landfill up. This stuff is not going in our landfill, but obviously we don't have endless amount of room. So I think as we move forward, this council really needs to start thinking about what we're going to do with our trash. And I think Mr. McCall's plan needs to be brought back up, and what Ms. Kamick was talking about, because we really need to come up with some ideas.
Yeah, there's some communities that have come up with some really creative things where they'll grind up the plastic and, you know, if plant containers, things like that, they grind them up and then create these plastic boards that people can then purchase and use as raised bed type things. So there's all sorts of things that we can do, and some of our plastics injection molding folks might even let us do it. I don't know. They probably don't want to muck up their machines, but these are creative solutions to a big problem that's costing this county about $1.2 to $1.3 million every year.
There's no reason why we can't be raking the money in on the other end. Chinese offered, that guy in Columbia, Chinese industry rep, he offered to come up here and tell us about his equipment. They're looking for a place to showcase their equipment. Look, so they maintain it. So they naturally not gonna bring no customer in and the darn thing's broke down. So they're looking for a foothold. Why can't we be the foothold? I caught a bunch of resistance on that. So there's a chance we could be, Oconee County carefully planned, like you say, always say, plan ahead. We could be the epicenter for recycling and making money for ourselves and charging other people to get rid of their stuff.
Let's do it.
I'll get with Mr. Steele here, and by the end of this week, I won't tell you we'll have something here by the next meeting, because we won't meet but one time next month, but we'll get something together and get back with y'all.
Okay. Any other comments about this action item? All in favor?
Aye.
Mobile mine duty crushing plant for the Oconee County Rock Quarry.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion on this? All in favor?
Yeah, I'd like Mr. Martin and Mr.
No discussion.
Buchanan to stand up as we make this motion and second.
I need some fellas in the back.
And anybody, and Mr., and, so I said earlier, we'll have, Mr. Buchanan on a night suit riding on top of his iron horse. So, but no, appreciate all that this is gonna do. This is gonna fix a lot of problems and, you know, make a lot of new income out there, so.
Now, once this is passed, we're still looking at maybe being 10 months out, 10 to 11. So, there will be that time. And during that time, there will be a couple of trips that's going to have to be made, at least one for inspection to make sure that it meets the standards for the United States. So you will hear us coming back to you about some of the employees from the quarry going to inspect this piece of equipment at some point in time.
And I know.
How about spare parts?
Spare parts, what we're going to do is we're going to have some consignment parts. There'll be some major parts that will be kept on site at the quarry in a container. They'll be under lock and key. They'll be heat and air, so they'll be out of the elements. And once those components are used, then they'll be replaced. There'll also be components kept in Philadelphia. So it's just like what y'all just said. I think I can still say, once this comes in, this will be the first crushing facility like this in the United States. That's all portable. So it's kind of a joint venture is what we're calling it with Sandvik. They also utilize Tri-County Tech, so they'll be utilizing the facility here. They also have their manufacturing plant also in Westminster, which is the same branch that this will be. So it's like one of you, Mr. McCall, maybe you said, and I'm glad Mr. Hellman's here, they can't afford for this thing not work either, because they want to bring people here to the United States, to Oconee County, to the rock quarry, just to show them what it will do and how it works. So that's why we've got the guys sitting in the back, the two younger guys. They'll carry this legacy on for years to come.
They gonna cut us a commission on each sale?
I got a shirt. I got a shirt.
That don't count.
$6 million shirt you're looking at right here. But it's going to be an exciting time.
How
I'm
much
looking
is
forward to
gonna,
it.
how much, Rick, how much is gonna put our production up?
Right now, the production is, well, we'd say about 300 tons an hour. Once we learn how to operate this plant and get everything dialed in, it's going to up our production to around 600 or better per hour.
Per hour? So
Per hour.
Gonna double production.
Double production.
Now, we gonna keep the old jaw and screen running,
We
right?
hope to be able to keep the old plant. As I think I was talking to Mr. Davis earlier, it will be a learning process. All the crew from the quarry will be going to Philadelphia for training because it is a different type of operation. So during that time, we hope to get them trained up before this equipment gets here. But we also want to be able to keep the old plant running with the new plant so we can try to get some production on the ground while we're still trying to run the new plant and make sure we know how to operate this thing, because it's gonna be a little different. So we're gonna try to run them both as long as DHEC will let us.
Well, cause it's important for people to know that right now, we cannot keep the product on the ground. We're selling it as fast as it can come off the belt.
And that's correct. That was the meeting I was in today, sir, that you saw me at the restaurant. We had some customers from the quarry that was, they're kind of concerned about us not being able to meet production. And again, we're producing at the quarry about 500,000 tons a year. So you can see when you double that, what it's gonna do.
What size jaw does this machine have in it?
Glad you
We
asked
have a
that
wonderful person from Sandvik here that I'm sure would love to come and speak with us today.
question. Now, again, a lot of this equipment's, it's different from an old dog like me. So, I'm sure Charles can get up and tell us anything you'd like to ask about this plant. Come on up here to the mic, Charles. We got you one over here. There's the guy you need to ask about the shirts.
Yeah, shirts and that. Yeah. Well, thank you for inviting me. Charles Hillman, I've been doing this since 1989. So I've done plants all through North America. I look after this division for our company for Canada, United States, Mexico, and the Caribbean. This plant that we've picked here, the primary jaw has the capacity, to give you I guess it's better to show it in terms, to give you an idea, the inside of the jaw is 13 feet deep. So it's big. It's probably twice of what you have today. It is about the largest jaw you can go mobile, and it's predominantly used for mining. So we do a lot of mines in all around the world where we'll use those, that primary jaw, and we'll produce upwards of 800 metric tons an hour. So it's, the object was when we were approached, we were told that the county would like the opportunity to be able to increase without having to make much more expenditures and have something that would last at least 20 years. So we elected this jaw, which is a size larger than probably required, but it gives you the potential to just bolt on the back of the plant. So instead of making the multi-million-dollar investments in the future to expand your capacity, you would make, let's say, $500,000 investment to increase, let's say, 100 tons an hour, which it's 30% more than what you're doing now, just on one expansion without having to spend the full run. Normally, a plant like this, we would do it static, so stationary, like what you'd have today. And typically, what I explain to everybody is we normally, a plant like that, it's about $1 million per 100 tons an hour. And if you're going static, this kind of a plant would be upwards of 10 million. So one of the advantages by going this way was it gave them the opportunity to be able to come on grid and off grid. So from an environmental point of view, and the other thing was that we could mobilize the primary and secondary portion of the plant. So the first part of the process plant is close to the face as possible and reduce, let's say, the need for a lot of mobile equipment to try and keep the pieces in the quarry in a more efficient, place. So you're moving towards the blast and then moving away from the blast. Whereas now you would haul all the material up ramps, and of course, as your quarry will increase and move out or go down levels, the haulage costs are very high. You know, they can easily go above $2 a ton if you start increasing distances. So the advantage with this is we can control that much better and convey basically the material where you need. More in Europe, it's being used quite frequently, like in Scandinavia, or like this is not like it's the only plant like this. We've been building these types of plants since 1978, in fact. The only thing is it's not something you've seen in North America. It's more something you've traditionally seen in Europe. Because of the high energy cost in North America, we've been blessed with low cost of fuel. You know, people complain of the pump prices. Trust me, they're like a third of what everybody else is paying in the world. So, you know, that's why we went this way. So, and then the flexibility with this plant is you can break it off and only run part of it. So, for example, you get extended hours in a lot of countries. You've got sound abatement laws. So the advantage with this plant is we could run, let's say, part of the plant where you wouldn't have to use a haulage. By having such a high capacity in the primary, ideally we could build a large stockpile, and then during certain hours of the day, and then during a couple, let's say 2 hours later, we'd run that pile down to a normal size. So you wouldn't have to keep the full crew, let's say, the full time. So that's one of the advantage with this concept that we've used. A lot of flexibility for the future and maintaining costs and stuff. Any other questions?
What's it powered by?
It's powered by diesel, onboard diesel generators, or electrical. So if you go line voltage, like which is what you're using right now, it can be powered by line voltage, like it can be self-powered. So, and a lot of, I'm not sure how it is here, but for example, in different parts, in different states in that, you get pretty big rebates. Like for example, in Canada, I'll give you an example. In the Western Canada, they give a rebate if you generate your own power. They actually pay the full fuel consumption in taxes from the federal government. And of course, it's not the same here, but there's nothing to say it won't go that way. It's all relative to what's happening with fuel crises around the world. So the advantage with this is it definitely gives flexibility for the unknown moving forward. So.
And what that will do for the quarry is in the summer times, it will keep them off the power grid. So the power bill will not be as high. We can come online with diesel anytime we want. And then when the demand drops, then you can go back on power, on the power grid. And the same thing in the winter. When you have to be off the grid by 3 o'clock, we can run it by diesel. If we are without power for days like we were here, you know, a couple of winters ago, we can still crush. So the guys, y'all remember that they won't be able to go home when we have bad weather because they won't have that saying, well, we can't crush because we don't have power. Now they'll have power anytime. Tom, Billy, y'all sure y'all still want to do this? So
the other advantage that we have with this plant is the way we set up the screening portion of it. So you can do a little bit of stockpile management. So a lot of companies have become very aware of what they produce. And because it's a breakage function between the blasts, so you're using chemical reduction and mechanical reduction. So what happens is you generate a curve, like a curve, and then you split it up and you put it in all the different piles. The advantage with this is, let's say there's a specific product that you get a big demand for, we can just take that product and focus on that product, which is you could never do that with your static plant. So we call it more like just-in-time manufacturing, which is really, you know, so you're spending the money where you're gonna get the highest yield or the quickest yield. So it's the way we would design a new plant, and that's the advantage with this plant is we focused on how to do it more mobile. So it's basically it's basically your plant, a static plant, but on a huge set of tracks. That's why we call it mining duty. It's used by big mines will run this type of equipment all the time. So
and once it gets here, you know, as I've told everybody, I've been in the industry for 32 years, 33 years. I was not a believer of this at the time until I had to go see one, and it's an amazing piece of equipment. So when we do get this in here in the whenever time frame, we definitely gonna want y'all to come out there and look at this thing, because it's gonna be very impressive.
Give
It
you-
sounds very impressive.
To give you an idea of the jaw, I had a customer just rebuilt his jaw. He bought it from me in 1994. He's done over 30 million tons. And I said to him, I said, John, why are you rebuilding this jaw? Why wouldn't you trade it in for new one? He said, never gave me any trouble, so I'm going to rebuild it. So to me, I was fascinated. I thought he's certainly got his return. So, and then the other thing we did with this is we focused on a 3-year program. So we have 3 years worth of continuous measuring, monitoring. So I send a crew in every quarter, every maintenance. For the next 3 years, we're providing service inspections, reports, detailed reports, and it's built all into the price of the unit, the inspection, the maintenance. So what that does is it gives you peace of mind long term. It gives us peace of mind that we won't have a problem. And at the same time, it gives the opportunity for process improvement. So we, for example, like all the blasting techniques and all that will be reviewed, and how we can get the best yield out of all the best return on whatever money is spent in the process. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this?
Just to give a little clarification for those that thought I was against or for selling the rock quarry, I've always been for investing in the rock quarry, and that's what we're doing here. So I don't think there's any doubt where I stand in what we're doing as we're looking to double production.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unfinished business?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just wanted to thank the ad hoc committee that worked on those BZA things that we just passed unanimously on first reading. I know it wasn't always unanimous, talking with some of the members on there, but we do appreciate the committee's work and know that that was for the benefit of this county, and everybody's hearts are for that cause. And so we appreciate all the time y'all put in. I don't think they got paid for that, but they probably should have. And so thank you for spending your time to help this county.
Anything else?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Reed, where do we stand on the deed to the sewer authority for the southern connection?
Last 3 communications I had with Mr. Brandt were to this effect. I emailed him, said, please give me the revisions that you talked about. He called me back and said, Mr. Eleazar had a concern with some language regarding our reimbursement, and that he would get back with me with specifics. And I said, if you can't get the revisions in writing to me, just call me up and we can work them out over the phone and redline them. He said he would. He did get married in between, but he didn't get back with me, and that was to be last Monday. And I emailed him on, I think it was Thursday or Friday this past week, and have not heard back. I'm pushing. I obviously cannot contact his client. I can only speak through Mr. Brandt.
Okay.
We started talking about the Westminster magistrate. Did you tell us everything we needed to know, or there's something else?
No, I think that's it. I can get the numbers, the hard numbers. I have them on my desk. All I need to do is just see what direction you want to go, and then I'll call, make a few phone calls, and see where we end up with it.
Any new business? Council committee reports, Mr. Kane.
The Planning Economic Development Committee meeting met June 5th, 2018. Several presentations. The first was Utica Revitalization presentation by Mr. Nelson Vassy. Discussed the continuing progress in that area. There was a trash pickup in Utica. Appreciate the assistance from numerous organizations, including Keep Oconee Beautiful Association, Oconee County Solid Waste, and a number of volunteers from the community. And during that committee, I noted that some may wonder why Utica is important to economic development in Oconee County, and it is due to the fact that a very large mill shut down in roughly the year 2000, and the mill village surrounding that mill has gone downhill since that point. It has been designated with, it's been designated as an opportunity zone by Governor McMaster, and along with the city of Seneca and Oconee County, we have an industrial park that borders the village. So it is a prime location for industrial development and also potential workforce housing. And getting it cleaned up is step one in making it more attractive for investment. So once the area is cleaned up, it'll be a great opportunity for redevelopment. And just as a side note, the volunteers picked up over 2 tons of garbage that day. About 4,300 pounds of trash was picked up. Next, we had Mr. Chapman updating us on traditional neighborhood development. He had been directed at the prior Planning and Economic Development Committee meeting to look into traditional neighborhood development so that we can allow developments like Clemson's Patrick Square in Oconee County. There's demand for that type of development, and we want to make it easy to do business in Oconee County. So Mr. Chapman will be scheduling a meeting with myself, the administration, and Neil Workman from Trail Corporation, who's offered to lend his experience and wisdom. We've also spoken with Mr. Chapman has also spoken with other developers, builders, and surveyors, and is in the process of getting a meeting date for all interested parties involved. Next, Mr. Chapman presented on clarification of certain code sections regarding land use and development contained in chapters 26, 32, and 38 of the Code of Ordinances, including potential challenges in the code that was brought up at the last meeting, which were addressed with the Planning Commission. There's discussion of the zoning matrix, subdivision naming challenges, sign code, Lake Residential District. Next presentation was by Mr. Rick Cothran, Dean of Corporate and Community Education Division at Tri-County Tech. He has been working on an initiative in the Utica Mill area to bring people who are not participating in the labor force to participation in the labor force. He discussed workforce development, the shortage of workers due to low unemployment, and the statistical data of where older textile mills are. The unemployment rate is almost 10 times where it is everywhere else. He spoke about opportunities to get people back engaged and into the workforce, and we certainly appreciate Tri-County Tech's involvement in that area. Finally, I believe Ms. Hartman spoke about, with the Oconee Economic Alliance, spoke about economic development in Oconee County, giving an overview, including logos, the mission of the OEA, the efforts, working with different companies, and talking about the number of citizens being employed in Oconee County is the highest I think it's ever been, and the unemployment rate is the lowest in 20 years here. And also some updates regarding the wayfinding signage that will be placed around the county, which was paid for through a grant. Next Planning Economic Development Committee meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, September 4th, 2018 at 5:00 p.m. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. It's kind of a waste of time to go over the Budget Committee meeting notes, given that we just passed the budget. So if it's okay with y'all, we'll just pass on that and move on, since we have a rather lengthy executive session.
Good with that?
Okay?
I'm perfect.
Yeah, it's getting a little late. Do I hear a motion to recess to executive session for the purpose, hang on, for the purpose of, number one, receiving legal advice and discuss a contractual matter related to the Chow Ram Park. And number 2, to receive legal advice and discuss lease agreement regarding the Rosa Clark Clinic. Number 3, discuss an employment matter and receive legal advice related to the search for a permanent county administrator. And number 4, discussion of an economic development matter related to the extension of Salem water lines on Highway 11.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Please.
Motion.
Second.
No action was taken in executive session. We have a few decisions to make or votes to make.
Yes, ma'am. If I could, have a motion to direct staff to negotiate and execute an option to purchase the property adjacent to the Chow Ram Park, allowing time for due diligence to investigate the site and funding as discussed.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, can I have a motion to direct staff to post for the county administrator consistent with the discussion and for it to remain open for 30 days?
So
And for,
moved.
I'm sorry, and for ACOG to do the initial vetting.
So moved.
Thank you, sir.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
And finally, can I have a motion to direct staff to investigate the economic development matter related to the extension of the Salem water lines on Highway 11 as discussed?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Then we have two
Opposed?
items that are on the
Aye.
agenda.
Aye.
Sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt the vote.
No, that's okay.
Then we have two items on the agenda. First reading of 2018-24.
Oh, wait a minute. I've got it. Thank you. First reading of 2018-24, an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a real property lease agreement between Oconee County as lessor and the Rosa Clark Medical Clinic, et cetera.
Make a motion.
Second.
Any discussion on this?
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to make a motion to table this matter as we do some more investigation with that as we work with the partnership with Rosa Clark as we are moving forward with the economic development matter.
Mr. Davis, if I could, can I do that negotiation and investigation contemporaneously with the lease negotiation
Yeah,
so they
that's-
could proceed with the grant?
Right.
work?
That's what I was just
Okay.
okay.
So not to table it? then?
Okay. So not a table.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry about that. I was misunderstanding.
Oh, no, we're good. Same page.
And I can remove my amendment then since I'll remove that amendment. Is that what you, yeah.
Please.
Withdraw your motion.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll withdraw that motion. Sorry, misunderstood.
Okay. That being the case, all in favor of the ordinance?
Aye.
We have an action item to authorize the interim county administrator to execute the letter to Rosa Clark Clinic consenting to certain limited alterations to county-owned property located at 2010 South Oak Street.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
For the appropriation of the economic development funds, we're going to table that until we further investigate. Yes?
Tabling it would be consistent with the action or the initial motion coming out of executive session. You may want to go ahead and just make a motion to table it. Just make it
Okay,
plain.
so can I get a motion to table this?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, is that it? Was there anything else?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Yes.
So move. Second,
Aye.
third, fourth, fifth.